Holy, holy, holy. Okay. So we begin now, Maharaj? Okay, I have the pleasure to introduce Bhakti Niskama, Shanta Maharaj. I have a hard time with the middle initials. I'm old, so forgive me. Anyway, he's come here to give us this presentation so kindly, and he is highly qualified in the academic realm. But when I talked to him about his, biography, so I could introduce him, he said, "Tell I'm the servant of the servant of the servant." So that's what I'm telling. His consciousness, while deeply involved with the depths of scientific knowledge and relating it to Vedanta and all these things, the devotion pervades all of his activities, and that's the real reality, and that's why I find his energy, enthusiasm, and determination in his service is very inspiring, and so we're really happy to have him here. And I think, though his presentation will be scientific, no doubt, and thorough in that regard, contained within the sound is the notion, the transcendental stream of devotion that comes to the heart. And if we can, not only open our intellect to this, but try to open our hearts, and then we'll gain even greater benefit. So I'm happy to introduce my old friend. He was a brahmachari for many years, and then he took sannyas. You were there, Maharaj. I was a brahmachari, and I got married for 35 years. These guys are lucky. I mean, looking back on it, I have no regrets, but still, they're lucky in one sense, in that when one comes towards the end of life, one has to leave all of the different attachments to the world. And naturally, in married life, one gets, deeply attached to, subtle things. So anyway, Maharaj has never gotten involved in that, so he's very pure.
Maharaj, I'm in soul suffering in illusion, but I need your all blessings.
Anyway, we're happy to have him here. Dandavad, Maharaj. Welcome.
So shall we begin?
Sure.
Yeah. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Sarudhamadara Swamiti Namini Namo Sadbhaktamane Manipur Bhavayacha Prabhupadalasya Devani Pachara Niratayati Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadisi Gaur Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram Rama Rama Hare Hare Mukam Karoti Bachalam Pangham Langhayate Giri Jat Kripatamaham Bande Sri Guru Dinatarin. So I am very fortunate to have Devotees Association and the kind mercy of Sripad Bhakti Vigraha Nyasi Maharaj. He is my well-wisher and always my good friend, and we had scientific programs together. Once there was opportunity and we went to one college in Kolkata and this program due to our Prabhu, I forgot your name. Birachandra, sorry, my memory is so weak. Birachandra Prabhu was insisting so much, and also Sripad Mahajogi Maharaj. He was telling, but I was thinking to devotees, what is necessary to present this talk, but they are feeling me to present this. Sometimes it is necessary for devotees to know these things because they encounter so many people if they are preaching, and our life is preaching life. Mahaprabhu's mission is preaching mission. So I thought we can discuss some of the things that we learned from our gurus. This is not my knowledge. I learned it by association of our gurus. So today I am going to discuss about a Bhagavat Vedantic critique to modern scientific view of life, its origin, its purpose, and biodiversity. So, I have many gurus in my life. I met, Srila Bhakti Maharaj during my PhD in IIT Kharagpur for during a conference that, my institute was organizing. It is one of the India's top institutes, Indian Institute of Technology, Kharagpur. So it was organizing on aging and dying. We are all going towards old age and death. So if according to modern science, we are all chemicals, so shall we keep the old peoples alive, or we can kill them by doing some chemical reactions? So whether life is beyond molecules, what is your view? So this is the discussion, and they invited a wide spectrum of people, many religionists and scientists and philosophers. So many people came, and I met my Guru Maharaj there, and he is one of the empowered devotee of Srila A.C. Bhakti Prabhupada, and Prabhupada organized Bhakti Vedanta Institute under his directorship. He is the founding director of Bhakti Vedanta Institute. So under him, actually there are Prabhupada's three main scientists, disciples. One is Puri Maharaj, that is, he was known as Madhava Prabhu at the time. Now after sannyas from Srila Maharaj, he is known as Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj and Sadaputta Prabhu. They are the three main scientist disciples, Sripad Maharaj, Puri Maharaj and Sadaputta Prabhu, under whom this Bhaktivedanta Institute being organized. And Prabhupada told this is one of our main preaching weapon or preaching arm of ISKCON to defeat the bogus propaganda that goes on the name of scientific education or scientific propaganda. So he disappeared in 2006, and he asked us to work under Sripad Bhakti Madhava Puri Maharaj, and Puri Maharaj says that he only gives Shiksha, he not gives any connection. So he sent me to Govinda Maharaj, and through Govinda Maharaj we came to Acharya Maharaj. In this way, under our gurus, all this family, we are working. So now we're coming to the topic, what is life? Many views there are existing in this world, and if you go to scientific world, basically most of the people will say that life is nothing but some complex combinations of atoms and molecules. Somehow life exists by mere some push and pulls of forces. There are different forces. Mainly there are four fundamental forces. There is gravity, strong force, weak force and electromagnetic force. And there are atoms, right? Different atoms, which are finally, if you can go further, there are subatomic particles, protons, electrons, and further down you will find so many subatomic particles they have discovered. So throughout the history, even though they claimed life is a product of atoms and molecules, but they could not answer what is the minimum number of parts that are essential for a living organism to survive. You ask any of the scientists, what are the minimum number of parts? Say, I say camera, you say these are the parts. But if you ask life, they cannot tell you what are the minimum number of parts. Even for a bacteria, which is a single cell organism, for that also they cannot say what are the minimum number of parts. And by what mechanism do these parts get assembled together? I know the mechanism by which a mic or a camera or a laptop can be produced, but they cannot able to answer these two simple questions. But they have stories on how life came. There was a initially worm pond is there, and they have somehow come together, first cell formed and then gradually evolved, and all this different living entity originated. So there are certain views. If you see peoples like Newton, Harvey, Descartes, so many great peoples, they were believing that life originated from organic matter. Like for example, there is rotten meat, from that life originated. That's why the idea was long time existing. And there is a person, there is a scientist called Francisco Reed. He did this experiment. If you see on the top of that, if you see, unfortunately I don't have a pointer, but the top of that there are 3 jars, right? If you see, he kept the meat in 3 jars. First one, he kept it open, right? And then the second one he covered it with a screen which has some porosity, and the third one he sealed it airtight. And then he found first one there are lots of living entities, maggots, they, starts producing. And second one also, after some time, it started to, generate. But last one, he did not find any such things. So from that, he concluded there are some, living entities, they are coming by getting the smell of the meat, and they're sitting on the meat, and they're laying the eggs. From there, these living entities are coming. So that experiment was necessary to remove the misconception that Newton, Harvey, and all these people were having. Till that point, he established that. And then, later on, there is a, very, famous scientist called Louis Pasteur. He did a swan neck flask experiment, and from that, he established that life can only come from life. Life cannot come from non-life. Life can only come from life. And after the experiment, that swan neck flask experiment, what he told, very famous statement, never will the doctrine of spontaneous generation recover from the mortal blow of this simple experiment. He said that after my experiment, nobody will claim that life comes from non-life. Okay? So, when this has happened, these two terms are very important, abiogenesis and heterogenesis. Abiogenesis means life comes from, inorganic stuff, simple, atoms and molecules. Heterogenesis means there is some, like organic matter, like body has organic stuff, right? From that, life is generating. So, these theories, they don't talk about the purpose in life. If you ask what purpose hydrogen exists, does they teach you anything like that? They don't teach. Because atoms and molecules, obviously everybody knows they don't have purpose. But, they never ask whether life has a purpose. So that's why you see there is two diagrams are there. There is a flying bird and there is a satellite. If you launch a satellite, if you know the parameters, you can calculate with some approximation where the satellite will be after a certain time. But if you release a living bird, you cannot calculate where the bird will go. Can any scientist calculate? It cannot. There is no law of projectile motion. They call it, when you throw an object, they call it projectile motion. So the projectile motion will not work to describe the trajectory where the bird will go. Bird has its own purpose to meet with, and according to that, it is driven, it goes somewhere else. Like, for example, if you say a marble is there, the toy that kids play, that is at rest, and a tortoise is also at rest. Until and unless you apply an external force, the marble will not move. But a tortoise was at rest. When it thinks, I want to move now, it starts moving. So the Newton's first law of motion, until unless you have external force, the body in motion, remain in motion, the body at rest, remain in rest, does not apply there. And for chemical, reactions, for example, two chemicals are reacting, acid or a base is reacting. There is no purposeful, guiding pathway for that. But when you see a, homogeneous, liquid inside the egg, it displays a precise pathway when the eye will form, when the kidney will form, when the brain will form, where it will form. All these things are well coordinated. So if life is mere chemicals or mechanical system, then why this purpose is coming into picture in the living reality, the time and space is not known. So, for explaining biodiversity in the sense how different living entity manifested, right? There are varieties of living entities. Can you name some of them, Gadar Prabhu?
Birds, lions.
Bacteria, right? And then what else? Human beings, monkeys, trees. Trees don't have brain, right? Bacteria don't have brain. But these are all living entities. So there is a concept called, tree of life, which Darwin, given the idea called tree of life. There is a first living entity. From that, all these living entities manifested by the process of random mutation and natural selection. Random mutation means there is a thing in the body, that time he was not knowing, now we know, scientists call it, DNA, genetic, stuff, all these things. But at the time he was telling, there is something in the body which dictates the bodily makeup. When it, the embryonic development time, there is something which, dictates that. So he was saying that during the time of, many generation, there may be some errors in production of that, which is known as mutation, and that will lead to production of all these different, species. So they were later on have a theory based on genes, Neo-Darwinism, they call it. Darwinism, Darwin's theory, and then Neo-Darwinism. And they said, based on genes, we will explain all different, living form, how they manifested. So they wanted to have a picture similar to this, which they have constructed based on fossil record. These all evidence was coming from fossil data. You know fossil, right? When living entity die and, the sediments bury them and they dry out, they say it's become rocks. And inside the rocks they found different, patterns. And from that they predict, okay, from this it came, from that came, that type of predictions. So they have constructed a tree of life, but based on genetic, studies, what they found out is that it's not matching. The tree of fossil of life is not matching with the tree that they want to construct from the genetic information. Rather, what is happening is that it's a genetic forest of life. There is no, what you can say, linear relationship with the living entities. Like they say, human body is 90% bacteria, 10% human cells. So bacteria are more, important, and there is nothing isolated. What Darwin was thinking, one living entity is isolated from other living entity. But what they found out is that there is a lot of symbiotic, exchanges, symbiotic relationships between the living entities. So that's why, the problem of explaining biodiversity become very difficult. So what is the real purpose of education that we have to, consider? Because the kind of education that we are receiving, that channelizes the way we think and way we see the world or, other living entities, the way we, lead our life is very much affected. In past, school system was founded on religious, conceptions. Religion was telling, this type of stuff must be, educated to the, children. So, education was not meant for so much earning at that time. But modern education, prime focus is how to have skills to earn money. That is the basic, goal. If I'm going to many universities, colleges, and I ask the students, what is the purpose of education? You get a job. That's it. But that was not the case when Gurukul was there, right? The ancient even in Western world, there is education system. It is based on, religious wisdom. How to help the soul from more, difficult, problem, solving more difficult problems. So root of materialism is to teaching that life comes from matter. So if you say man is nothing but a membrane full of chemicals, then how can somebody respect their parents? The chemicals that you are doing in the laboratory and the chemicals you are dealing with your parents, the same thing. How can you respect? Any respect will come, such a view. So, people are doing so much bad treatments to living entities. And, there is this has a lot of effect on medicine, cloning, and genetic modification of food, animal rights, and so on. People are doing so much harsh treatment to animals, actually. Because they're thinking, it's nothing more than chemicals. And, we don't know in future what will happen. They may do the poultry of human beings also for their food. We don't know. In which direction people, if this type of idea, goes on, then we don't know where we are, going, So that's why, many young people, after getting this education, they told, previously they were religious, but after getting education, they become atheists. They have got some knowledge, some wisdom, they call it, after getting this type of, education. So this type of education leads to moral degradation that we are, seeing in a modern, society. So these are the three main personalities who are very much influential to bring to this type of degradations. Bacon, Francis Bacon, Descartes, and Darwin. For Bacon, everything must be utilitarian. If you don't get any immediate utility of things, then you should not pursue it. But religion talks about you have to practice and do so many things, and sometime you will get it. It's not immediate. But for the Francis Bacon, it must be having an immediate, result. Otherwise, will not accept it. Controlling your bad, urges takes time. It's not immediate that you eat one medicine and immediately it is done. So he was against any such practices which is taking longer time, immediate results, what is necessary for Bacon. And for Descartes, he told that the nature is like a bag of tools ready for human purpose. You search the secrets and make it slave of yourself. You find the secrets, how the nature works, and you will be the master of that nature. And then he was telling only human being has soul, Descartes was telling, and all other living entities, non-human animals, so-called non-human animals, and then they are all having no souls. For Descartes, the crying dog and the gear that is making noise in a machine without oil are one and same. There are many literature you will find how Descartes' followers, they tortured animals. They burnt the animals. And animals, when they are reacting, they're saying they're same kind of thing. The gear makes noise and the animals reacts. It's one and same thing. And then Darwin came. He told, okay, human beings also don't have soul. Everything coming from atoms and molecules. In this way, this thing, happened. So previously I told about, Louis Pasteur, who established that life comes from life. So Darwin and his followers, they were thinking about this problem because people will definitely cite Louis Pasteur's, things, and the Darwin's follower, what they said, that you see, we accept Louis Pasteur for all lives, not for the first life. Life is always coming from life, it's true, but not for the first life. First life somehow came from non-life. Okay? And it is a very rare, it is a rare event, only happened once in the history, and somehow that life originated from non-life, matter was there, and somehow life originated.
Right. Never happens again, right?
So never happens again, because they know it is impossible. Okay? This was the, idea, which is the foundation of this all, materialistic things. But as the research progressed, people found out, very, important, findings. So they call something called, primordial bombardments. There are scientists who are working on the ancient history, what kind of, environment our Earth, experienced. And they found out the time that they suggest when this first life originated, in so many billions years back, after that, there are so many harsh environment our Earth experienced. There are some, huge objects, they're coming and they're hitting our Earth planet. So obviously, such huge objects are coming, then there will be a lot of, generation of heat. And that heat will not allow any living entities to, survive on our, planet. So then, they faced difficulties to explain this rare, event, what they are, talking about, the rarest, event which has happened, and then, all the lives, manifested. And then, the papers that came up from that, idea, have, some interesting, conclusions, which I would like to, say. For example, James Custing, he said that such, ideas about first origin of life from non-life, that field is in ferment, what he says. And for example, this paper, which is published in Science, one of the world's top scientific journal. So Mitchell, what he says, you see, sorry Charles, your warm little pond was a beautiful image. It's been enshrined in innumerable textbooks as the scientific theory of the origin of life. But to hear the planetary scientists talking these days, you were dead wrong. The warm little pond never existed. So the scientists, there's not my, people will say that, okay, people are talking about, the religious people are talking, but they are scientists. They are talking about this thing from purely based on evidence. They are saying this, So there are a lot of literature, such literature produced, which, challenges the idea of, Darwin's, theory. That's why panspermia, another new field came into existence, where they say that, okay, life not, originated on our earthly planet because it's not suitable. It might have originated somewhere else, outside in space, and from there it came. So these new ideas, they are coming up. And in 2005, Science magazine it produced a special issue on his 125th birthday, and then that issue have 125 questions, and the title of that issue is "What Don't We Know?" And one of the question is how and where life originated. We don't know. They acknowledge it. So chemical evolution they call it. Not only evolution for living entities, but to have a living cell. First life, say a living cell. It is not a simple thing, Do you think cell is a simple thing? You have cells, right? Body has cells. Do you think cell is a simple thing? Cell has many things. If you can read cell biology, it become a field itself. They're studying so many stuff in the cellular context, how the cell is so much complex. So to explain origin of life, they say these are the steps that it must pass through. Prebiotic synthesis or primordial soup, how it originated, first of all, from a purely existing ordinary chemicals, and then polymerization. I mean how the long chain molecules, DNA, RNA, they came into existence, and then proteins, all those things, pre-RNA world, RNA world, DNA protein world, and primitive cell, all these things. It's very, very difficult for them to explain based on purely physicochemical means. So the famous experiments on this field being conducted by Stanley Miller. You know his name? Anybody heard his name? Miller, he did an experiment in a flask to produce some so-called building blocks of life. Like you have this building, right? So building blocks. So if you can find out the building blocks, then you can build the structure. That was the idea, right? So he produced, at that time they were thinking the organic stuff that is there in the living entities cannot be produced from inorganic stuff. But he was the scientist and the Holler and other group of scientists who disproved that and produced some of the the so-called building blocks of life, some of the sugar and other molecules. And he was claiming that in future, after I produce all the molecules, I will produce life in the laboratory. When he was giving that talk, my Guru Maharaj was there. He was a postdoctoral scientist, Srila Bhakti Damodar Maharaj, and he raised the hand in the question and answer session. He said, Professor Miller, he wants to produce all these molecules, but if I give you all these molecules, can you produce life? He said, that I don't know. Then everybody, surprised. What? We want to get so much of funds to produce these molecules, and if somebody supplies you those molecules, in fact, those molecules are there. You just puncture the cell, and all these molecules are there. Those which is necessary for life, yet you cannot produce life. So when Prabhupada heard this type of challenge my Guru Maharaj given, many times if you listen to his lectures, many lectures he quote this. So today my disciple, my scientist defeated that materialistic propaganda, and he used to quote this many times. He said that I don't know what is this bogus idea. He wants to produce molecules, but if you supply all the molecules, he cannot produce it. Then what kind of idea is that? He was very, very happy. Prabhupada was very, very happy. So chemistry fails to convene the demands of biology in primordial soup. Basically, Miller kind of experiment demands that oxygen should not be there in the atmosphere. Okay. So in the what you can say previous ancient atmosphere, when the life originated, if oxygen was not there, and obviously ozone layer was not there, then radioactive rays will come and destroy those molecules which are forming. So oxygen is present, there is problem. Oxygen is not present, there is problem. So this is one of the dilemma that they are facing. And also, the molecules generally found, the problem they call it chirality. In the nature, you find left-handed and right-handed molecules. They are mixed together. But in the case of living entities, for example, we need right-handed molecules in sugar and left-handed molecules for amino acid. How such a choice manifested from a mixture of left-handed, right-handed molecules is a big trouble, because reactions happens. It does not choose left-hand or right-hand molecules. So this is a problem that they are facing. So chemistry, general ordinary chemistry, does not support the living, activities, so-called chemical activities that is going on there. So that's why they say that the soup theory, the chemical soup theory is expired. That's you see in there is a paper published in 2010, what's in the NPR. What he says that Nick Lane, he says primordial soup theory is now expired. It's a whole article on that. So they are looking for new updates, on this, how to what you can say, keep their faith on the materialistic views. But yet they're not updated. Many of the institutes textbooks are not updated with all these findings. So polymerization problem, in the sense, in modern science we know that if you leave this room, for example, it's a very natural observation. If you leave this room unattended, what will happen to this room? This room will full of dust, right? Disorganized. But if you are taking care, then room is organized, right? That's why you have to put some effort. So entropy is always increasing, what science says. Disorderness is always increasing. But when you say life originated from chemicals, then it is opposite.
Right.
Then long chain molecules, order has to be produced. So they are facing the problem how this long chain molecules can ever produce without putting any directions. Okay, polymers can be produced by living entities who plan an experimental pathway from starting simple molecules to a long chain molecules. But nature by itself, without any intelligence, how can the atoms and molecules can do that? It's a question.
Maharaj, could you maybe tell them what entropy is?
Yes, I already told. Disorderness, right? I already explained.
You got it? Okay.
Yes. So the DNA and protein world dilemma, in the sense, the living entities, when you say that mechanical system or chemical system, then it has to be explained by a linear logic. Okay, from this starting point, this thing came and this thing came and this thing came. A linear way you can proceed. But in the case of living entities, for example, protein and DNA. DNA is necessary for protein and protein is necessary for DNA. So which came first? Whether it is protein or DNA. So it becomes a chicken and egg problem. They are fighting. Protein first theory and DNA first theory. And they fight between scientists. Which came first and not able to solve. And then there is another such circular logic. Whether metabolism came first or replication came first. Means reproduction came first or sustenance came first. Chicken came first or egg came first. So this is a big debate in the publications. You can see so many publications, they're fighting with each other on this. And for example, the cellular membrane, cell has a cover. And they say that it is such a wonderful stuff. It is very intelligent material. It knows what is needed from the atmosphere, what is it is self and non-self, and how to react to different atmospheric conditions. So they say that it is so complex, our atmosphere in the earth will never able to create such a stuff, such a material by the chemicals. So they say that this material must have arrived from outer space. There are a lot of theories on that. So cell membrane is extremely complex to conceive in present atmosphere or the ancient atmosphere that they conceive. So I want to show you one video. I don't know, Prabhu has kept it. Okay, let me see. Yeah, here it is. I think you all must have seen this video, but still I want to show you to have a feel of what scientists discovered about how to have this on the screen. How to have it on the screen, please? I mean, I want to show you to all. You can see it here. Maybe this is not visible, but you can see it here. So this is the a video made by Harvard University on a cellular activities. They say that it is so complex. You see how it works. How different things. There is a dressing room. How can I show this video? They're not coming there, Prabhu.
Maybe you have to
Close it. Oh, wait, then otherwise I will show it in laptop. Don't worry. also in the laptop.
But then the camera wouldn't see.
Oh my goodness. Technology.
Which numbers?
Just I saw it here on the laptop. Don't worry.
There.
Oh, okay.
Huh? That will be fine. Fine for me. But the sound should come. Sound is not coming somehow though. Sound will not come?
Well.
Okay. Close it. Wait, then also I will show you the laptop. Don't worry. I'll show you the laptop.
Yes. I didn't know you went to Harvard.
Wow. Okay. Too much. Okay. You can all see the inner life of the cell. You can search in YouTube and you'll find.
This is in one cell?
One cell.
Uh-huh. Oh dear.
So they are surprised how chemicals can do such thing.
It's going to arise spontaneously, of course, in a chemical soup.
Oh dear.
Take this out.
So will you accept that people will say you that chemicals done all these things by themselves? They are also shocked to see all these things inside the cell.
Jeez. It's impossible complexity, right? They can never.
Can you go to the presentation? So this very nice video. Long time back it made. Many people knows it. About the inner life of cell that Harvard Institute made it. You can go to the video here there. Go. Oh, close it. Yeah. Go below. Yeah, below this one. Yeah, this one. Yeah. So there was some experiment conducted by this scientist. You can see his photo there, David Deamer, and he did a very what you can say. You can say that what kind of experiment is this, but he did it. He dig a hole and put all warm water and all the essential chemicals that are necessary, for life, and he waited for a long time to see whether life originates from that. And after a long time waiting, he said that no, life cannot come from that. And that experiment being published in one of the world's top journal in science, and he said that life cannot come from such thing. And my Guru Maharaj, I already explained, told about that. And also Puri Maharaj, we have a group called Sadhu Sangha, 40,000 scientists. We are having some discussions worldwide. So in that group, he wrote once that you have a living cell, you puncture it, and all the essential chemicals are there. You wait as much as you like, you will never find again life comes in that cell. So Indian Science Congress invited us under its 100 what you can say congregation of science meet, and I had given a talk on similar topic. I'm sorry, Darwin, chemistry never made the transition to biology, and that full article you can find there. And you can see the chemistry to that biology, a living cell. We don't have a pathway. No mechanism is there. If you say that it came, then you have to demonstrate with some kind of mechanism. But they could never able to explain how that happened. What is the process that underwent? So basically, science follow these two type of process: top down and bottom up. That means if you see a leaf, they break it. The small particles, right? Keep on breaking. That is one process, or keep on adding up things. So this is the process that basically science try to adopt to construct or understand things. So certain things like machines or ordinary chemical reactions can be understood by this type of process, but you cannot understand living entities by this process. Why? See, for example, when they do such thing, they look for a consistency of the pattern. If you do this, follow this path, again and again, same chemical must be produced. If you do this type of forces, if you combine together, this type of phenomena must be manifesting. They look for a consistency. See, if every time you clap, a bird will fly away, right? Every time you clap, a bird will fly away. But to explain that phenomena in terms of these atoms and molecules, even though it is consistently happening, very, very difficult. Life may show certain consistent behavior, but to explain it in terms of molecular phenomena is very, very difficult. That's why long back Kant told there will never be a Newton for the blade of grass. But Newtonian mechanics will never be able to explain a blade of grass. That's what Kant told. And Sripad Puri Maharaj in Princeton University campus, he runs an institute, Bhakti Vedantic Institute. So there he distributed a flyer. All the science and all the scientists in the world together cannot make a single blade of grass. Okay? So Mahaprabhu told, Trinadapi sunicheno. One must be more humble than a blade of grass. A blade of grass is making everybody humble. Okay? So teaching such things have a very bad consequence on the society. And we can know if people try to murder people, other people, claiming that I did some chemical reactions in laboratory and I am now murdering people. What is the difference? What is the moral ground to justify non-killing, maintaining a respectful attitude towards other living entities? We don't have that. So people are polluting rivers and destroying mountains and destroying nature like anything because they lost respect towards nature. But if they are being educated, no scientist can create a river. Scientists don't create river. Scientists don't create mountain. No need to become proud. We are so insignificant. Our control over reality is so insignificant. This type of teaching is not happening. What type of teaching happening? We are so great. We did so many great things. So the false pride is being enhanced on this materialistic teaching, and this lead to some distress also. People are becoming proud, but they don't know how to fulfill their urge for fulfillment. And the rate of suicide, is increasing like anything worldwide. I was in South Korea, when doing postdoctorate, I heard many of the people, little aged, they commit suicide there. Because when they are young, they work hard, earn money, enjoy. And the moment they become old, people are not looking, their children, they leave them, and they have to commit suicide because they are not happy if don't have, sufficient resources to, maintain that type of life that they were maintaining. So, so many problems that we are facing because of this type of, wrong idea about life. So, but Darwin's theory itself, many of them realize it's self-defeating in nature. For example, Darwin himself doubted his own theory. He thinks, with me the horrid doubt always arises whether the conviction of man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. Would anyone trust in the conviction of a monkey's mind if there are any conviction in such a mind? This is Darwin's statement.
Very confused.
He himself, confused about his theory, how to explain. Because he tried to explain bodily, but he thought about mind, What to talk about, this human mind, which seems to be, very, what you can say, developed. And how it can be explained by mere, animalistic, conceptions. So, but, people somehow, maintain the dogmatic stand. For example, Francis Crick and Watson, famous for working on the DNA structure. So Crick says, our highly developed brains, after all, were not evolved under the pressure of discovering scientific truth, but only to enable us to clever enough to survive and leave descendants. Okay? So, science practice itself being doubted with this concept if we strictly follow. That means science is not based on finding the truth, it is based on survival. Do you understand? So, that way, the idea that, Darwinism being taught to people is of self-defeating in nature. But people are, so dogmatic. For example, here, Richard Dawkins is very famous. and what he says, those who are religious human beings, they have mental virus. And there is a God gene, survival advantage. So many things are, coming up, these all wrong ideas, But, people should question, if we follow strictly that principle, the very foundation of science, which is meant to find the truth, is also questioned. Because, following your view, science practice is not for truth, for survival. So, Darwin's time, fossil record was the main evidence which is being supplied to support this type of, views. But as the, studies progressed, they found out, 4 problems. Major problems in fossil type of evidences. This is stasis, sudden appearance of form, sudden disappearance of form, relative absence of transitional form. Stasis means in the fossil they found out for millions of years the species remains the same throughout this years. If it is changing always, the change must be seen. Why it's not changed? For millions of years it does not change. So this is known as problem of stasis. And then, sudden appearance of form. In the fossil data, they say there are living entities, different living entities, all of a sudden they appear. So, how it happens? They don't know. And then, sudden disappearance of the forms. In the sense, Darwin's theory says, if the atmosphere is favorable, living entities will flourish. Right? But what they found out in the fossil data, when the atmosphere is favorable, yet, all of a sudden, the living entities are disappearing. They don't know what is the reason for that. And relative absence of transitional form. Transitional form means half ape, half human being. They never found that. Either they found a developed ape or developed human being. That means if I say this laptop came from a mobile phone, but I not seen half mobile phone and half laptop. What I seen is that only laptop or mobile phone. So they say that why we are seeing only developed organism, why not developing? This is the question that they are facing.
And why not now happening? Why don't we see fish crawling out of the water?
Yes, so many things. There are theories on that. They are facing basically, that is also all developed species. Why not developing the mechanism? Why not it recorded? So basically, these 2 ideas they use to support fossil data: stratigraphy and radiometric dating. Means how they give a age. If somebody asks you, what is your date of birth? Can anybody go to a scientist to know the date of birth? Can any scientist tell us our date of birth? No. Only those who witnessed our birth, They note it down, they can only tell us. Otherwise, we cannot know. They can tell some roughly, maybe this many years back. But while living, very difficult to predict the age. Because these all datings are after death. You understand? Radiometric dating, how it works, there is, the C12 and, C14, the ratio, they assume it is constant in the atmosphere. So when you are living, so you are taking constantly carbon. So they say that the ratio in the atmosphere and the ratio in the human being or the living entities is maintained, same. And they assume the ratio is constant throughout the history. That is known as, one term they use, uniformitarianism. Mm-hmm. They have to assume it to give any prediction. Otherwise, they cannot predict. They have to assume it. So, what they found out that C12 or C14 ratio, once you die, because you are not taking carbon, so it reduces. Then they can find out what is the what you can say age from where you die and now. The difference they can find out from that half-life calculation. But that half-life, what it has, 5,730 years, that can predict only up to 50,000 years, a bone of that much span. But the evolution is talking about so many millions of years, right? So they cannot use that technology. And other isotope technology, like for example, a dog died in your house, okay? So now you bury that dog in the soil. So after that, it becomes fossil. So what scientists will do in future is that they try to date the sediment, the soil particle, okay, not the dog directly, because C14 will not, that carbon dating will not work. So radioisotope dating, they have to date the sediment, okay. So the difficulty arises here. We cannot directly date living entity. We have to date from the sediment. And in that also there are problems. The issue is that they assume half-life of the this all isotopes is constant throughout the history. But as the research progress, they found out the solar cycle affects the rate of decay. So there is in long back in 1977, one scientist wrote in his book, The Science of Evolution. It is obvious that radiometric techniques may not be absolute dating methods that they are claimed to be. The uncertainty inherent in radiometric dating are disturbing to the geologists and evolutionists. They tell it the radiometric dating are like railway timetable, right? Is always violated. So this type of ideas are came up. So now they left out with only one process. If you eliminate, okay, this dating will not work through radioisotopes or carbon dating, they left out with the stratigraphy, they call it. If you see some road works are going on, when they cut a rock, you'll find different colors. You've seen that? Different colors. They say that different layers, different like ages, it represents different ages, right? So in that, they say the bottom of the rock is the oldest one and the top is the youngest one, and they say that the deposition occurred layer by layer. That is the theory that given by Nicholas Steno in 1667. That theory still now they are using, okay? But there was a researcher. There is a researcher and his name is Guy Brittelt, and he did in University of Colorado an experiment called fundamental experiments in stratification. And Ramananda Prabhu, can you show this video? Possible? That experiment is very, very important, which challenged the idea of fossil dating. And you should all can explain these things if anybody saying to you to believe their ideas about this materialistic conception of life. If you know some of before the sedimentology. Yeah, that one. Yeah. You can make it full screen here.
So it's fascinating because they witnessed the past history of the Earth. Their study should unveil mysteries about the formation and the history of living species. The principal features of sedimentary rocks include distinct stratas of relatively homogeneous material. Intermittent settling over very long periods of time figure among possible explanations of stratification. Internally, sedimentary rocks display microscale stratification or lamination of relatively coarse and fine particles. Because sedimentary rocks form from settling of particles underwater, it is instructive to study fundamental sedimentation patterns in the hydraulics laboratory.
He wants to study how the deposition happening. What is the pattern of deposition?
Resulting from equal weights.
They taken different particles with different colors, different sizes.
And fine sands in white is tested in the laboratory.
Consider the motion of a sphere rolling on a horizontal surface. The radius of the sphere is r, the mass is m, the angular velocity omega, and the translation velocity v is equal to omega times r. The moment of inertia of the sphere is equal to 2/5 of the product of the mass m and the square of the radius. The kinetic energy of the motion is given by the following formula. E is equal to 7/10 product of the mass times the square of the velocity.
Okay. Here you go.
Shows that at a given velocity, the kinetic energy of a sphere increases with the mass.
So if you have same velocity, the particle is more heavy, it has more kinetic energy.
Energy than finer particles.
This example illustrates that rolling coarse particles have more kinetic energy than small particles. The mobility of coarse particles in front of obstacles or surface perturbation therefore increases.
So he says that smaller particles will get sooner deposited because they cannot overcome the obstacles.
Black and small particles. This picture is the motion. Small particles which have lower kinetic energy fall between the coarse particle and deposit on the bottom of the moving layer. The coarse particles with higher kinetic energy roll on top of the fine bed of fine particles.
Particle segregation occurs under lateral motion of a mixture. Coarse black particles roll on top of fine particles when they have the same specific gravity.
He did experiments in different domains, vacuum.
Submerged particles under hydraulic shear stress also display the same particle segregation characteristics.
In still fluid.
The fundamental question about lamination is the following. Does nature produce repetitive segregation under a continuous supply of sediment? First, the submerged conditions are examined. The turbulent fluid motion surrounding the particles led scientists to believe that lamination was caused by periodic cycles of turbulence.
So you see a whole lot of mixtures, There is no different particles not, depositing separately. They're all mixture. See? Same for, this also. In the vacuum also, it's a mixture.
It should be noted.
But what we find is that different layers means same type of things are in the one layer, right? How that happens, he was studying that.
Given the absolute vacuum is at minus 29.92 inches of mercury, the hypothesis of turbulence is tested near complete vacuum at minus 22 inches of mercury.
Are carried through.
Now he is explaining how the deposition is going to happen. In a moving fluid, how the deposition will happen.
After a certain time interval, we get a second bed profile at time t2.
You can see in the still fluid, it's a mixture, right? In the vacuum also it's a mixture. But in the moving fluid, he's showing this is the pattern which will follow.
The layer of sediment is the accumulation of sediment between the initial time t1 and the subsequent time t2.
You see how the deposition happening in the moving fluid. In its open channel, if you allow the fluid and sediments go,
a close look at the top set slope in slow motion clearly shows a laminated deposit of finer particles. The thickness of the top set deposit decreases in the downstream direction as the foreset slope of the delta is approaching.
Over a long period of time, the accumulation of sediment displays clear stratification.
So you can see
Fine particles
different particles are depositing at different depth in the moving fluid, which was not happening in the still fluid and in the vacuum.
It is important to understand that the chronology of the formation of deposits depends on the layers and not on the strata.
You see.
Isochrones correspond to the interface between successive layers, not strata.
It's a stratification.
The thickness of strata displays clear stratification patterns.
So he studied after the experiment, he can found that in a different depth, different particles being deposited. He checked it. And
A cross-section is cut through the delta to examine the primary features of deposits of sediment mixtures carried out of a steady flow and the continuous sediment supply.
you see,
The cross-section
different depth, different particles are deposited. Now what it proves is very, very important, What it proves, can I stop it for some time?
Here,
Yeah. What it proves is very important. Now you see, as this deposition is moving forward, if you see bottom of that and the downstream, if you say bottom one is the older one and top one is the younger one, but if you go further downstream, the top one is much older in the downstream than the bottom one. So it is not a depth-wise analysis. It is based on the direction of development or fluid flow. That's what this experiment established.
And the size of the particle,
Yeah.
animation.
So how it is related to evolution?
The one at the top here is older than the one at the bottom.
You understand how it is important for evolution theory. So this experiment created a biggest challenge for evolution theory. Can you go to the slide now?
Maharaj, are they able to actually differentiate in terms of knowing the age of those different...
They cannot.
Exactly,
That's
yeah.
what they say, that now we need to have a complete rewritten of the chronology that we describe in geology.
Yes.
And there is a lot of such papers have been published very recently in Nature and Science, that all of that datings that are being given must be removed or rejected, and new ways of understanding things has to be developed. Next. So the idea now fossil is no longer the basis. That's why scientists are not talking about fossils. If you go to any scientist these days, they don't talk about fossils because they're hiding there. What are the problems are there? Now they talk about genes, genetics, met stuff. And what has happened in due course of time, even in genetic studies, very, very important. What Francis Crick was telling, that it's a gene from which the information goes to RNA and protein. It does not come from protein. So this is the idea, they call it central dogma in biology. Called a central dogma, the theory. And as the research progressed, they found out that a new field came out which is known as epigenetics. It's not the genes alone, but the protein also gives information to DNA. If you provide a stressful atmosphere, even bacteria can manipulate its DNA. So there are so many ways that DNA can be manipulated. That's why the read-only disk, previously you called it read-only, right? The idea of read-only DNA or the genetic system become read-write system.
When did that change happen?
It happened in epigenetics. It's there is towards the end of 20th century,
Okay,
and there are a lot of after Barbara McClintock, she got Nobel Prize for jumping genes. She was being rejected for a long time dogmatically, but later on her work was recognized, and that idea came up thereon. So 2012, one article which is very well known, Dissecting Darwinism, came up, and in that what the scientist that Kuhn he says, several of the textbooks continued to incorrectly promote the debunked Miller-Urey origin of life experiment, the long discredited claims about non-functional appendix and tonsils, and the fraudulent embryo drawings of Ernest Haeckel. Haeckel famously he drawn, trying to relate embryological development with the evolution. They are all proven to be fraudulent. In essence, current biology students, aspiring medical students, and future scientists are not being taught the whole story. Rather, evidence suggests that they continue to receive incorrect and incomplete material that exaggerates the effect of random mutation and natural selection to account for DNA, the cell, or transition from species to species. What he's saying is that our students, they're getting wrong information.
Maharaj, what's the motivation behind that?
The motivation is that if scientists are not the boss, then gods immediately come into picture. Previously, they are thinking DNA is the controller and we can control DNA. But they found that DNA is controlled by the atmosphere, by the environment. Then who is controlling environment? That topic immediately comes. So, they know that they want to, avoid that, So, discarding these ideas are, very rapidly going on worldwide. There are many scientists who signed a petition that this theory must not be taught to the students. And in South Korea, 2012, they make a major step. And you see what it says is this article published in Nature, and still now that practice is valid in South Korea. The country's Ministry of Education, Science and Technology announced last month that many South Korean textbook publishers will begin producing revised editions that will for the first time exclude discussions and examples of evolution. They say that without evidence we don't teach all these wrong things. And some countries say that if we teach that, what are the flaws that must be taught? We should not keep in darkness. So basically, we have to understand the ontological distinction between mechanical, chemical and biological systems. Sripad Puri Maharaj wrote a very nice article on logic of life. And I'm presenting some of his ideas. What he said that the three systems, they are ontologically different. For example, science thinks the planetary system is a mechanical system, okay, and how the different planets are related by a force, external force called gravity. How a bicycle, different parts are related by nuts and bolts, right? By the mechanical forces, they're related by mechanical forces. And if you separate all those parts, the seat and the spring or the pedal, they all maintain their identity. If you break a rock, it becomes two rocks. So they maintain the relationship is very external. You don't consider the composition of the planet, you only think about the mass of the planet. And that is enough for the gravity. But when you come to a chemical reaction like a sodium chloride, and if you separate them, then they exhibit different properties. So they're all relational. With relation to something is acidic, something is basic, all this, the relational identity and more internal identity you will find in chemistry. But in the case of a cell, the relationship, there's not like, part and whole relationships. It's a participating members in the whole. You cannot separate, for example, your eye, kidney, lungs, everything, and you give in a polythene, this is Mr. X, you take it and assemble somewhere. You cannot say like that. But in a mechanical system, you can say like that. In a chemical system, you can say, these are the raw chemicals, you follow this pathway and produce this, chemical. You can do that. But you cannot say that for a living, stuff. Why? Because life, these days scientists are saying, exhibits sentience or cognition or consciousness. And consciousness cannot be produced by mechanical manipulation or chemical manipulation. That is one of the biggest change that has happened, and we know that from our ancient, literature in India and other, religious, text, especially in Vedic, tradition. It is more elaborately, given than other, explanations, other religious, explanations. So consciousness become one of the important, topic in modern science. So biologists do not have a monopoly to study and understand life. It's not necessary that life should be only studied by biologists. And the best example is Erwin Schrödinger. He was not a biologist, but he written a very nice, article or a small monograph on what is life. And in that, he had discussed about negentropy, negative entropy. And he talked that life exhibits negative entropy. That means you are living, that's why order is maintained. The moment you die, what happens to your body? Degrades, simplified, right? It becomes simple molecules. But you are there, your body is maintained by the process of anabolism, metabolism, catabolism. Why a chemical reaction has to continue for so long? Generally, chemical reaction starts and they end to go towards equilibrium. Why the living system is going on and on in equilibrium process and it maintains the order is very, very important. A machine, the body is not renewed. But in our case, the body is renewing, right? This is after 7 years, all chemicals are renewed. But no mechanical system or chemical system is doing such a thing. So in bacterial studies, they further, advanced our, knowledge about how complex the living, system is. And they have a, various, intelligent activities. They have a language, they communicate, they vote. Like you vote, they in a group, in a colony, they vote, they decide by, majority. What majority of that colony wants. They make, decision based on that. They have an individual identity, they have a group identity, they have cooperation. So many things they found out, and that's why there is a famous article written by James Shapiro, Bacteria are small but not stupid. So in that, he explains how bacterial intelligence, changes the way, we are seeing into, the organisms. So, modern science went through a subjective evolution. What is that subjective evolution? Biology was misconceived as an amalgamation of the physics and chemistry. But 21st century biology view of organism as a sentient system. It's not just pure physics and chemistry, but living reality is a sentient system. If you see in Cambridge, they organized a few years back a conference, and all the top biologists and scientists, they signed a declaration called Cambridge Declaration. They say that human to octopus, all non-human animals, they are also sentient beings. And now many plant scientists are talking about plant consciousness. And obviously bacterial consciousness is well known for last 1 decade and more. And this is one of the famous scientists, Ernest Mayr, leading evolutionary biologist in 20th century. And in his book, This is Biology, what he says, it is a little difficult to understand why the machine concept of organism could have had such long-lasting popularity. After all, no machine has ever built itself, replicated itself, programmed itself, or been able to produce its own energy. The similarity between an organism and a machine is exceedingly superficial. You say that, a laptop will not produce babies, but a bacteria will produce babies. All living entities, If you say a scientist go and produce a monkey, you will not produce in the laboratory, you go to monkey. If you want to produce a tiger, you will not produce in the laboratory, you will go to a tiger. So, the same kind of species come from the same kind of species. It does not come from something else. So, he's saying so many explanations, and it is artificial intelligence, AI, and machine, organism comparisons now taken to another level. And many scientists, they are also challenging the exceedingly superficial way of comparing machines with the living entities.
Maharaj, when I was at university in the 90s, the biologists were the most dogmatic about evolution and all these things.
Yes.
Is it being actually changed, or are there holdouts?
Now physics, because of quantum mechanics, they accept, they're open for more spiritual ideas. But some of the biologists, they are fighting, and their number is increasing. And if you go to a website called the third way of evolution, and in that they found out they completely reject Shapiro, then Kunin, and then Baluska. There are very prominent biologists. They all reject Darwin's theory. They say that we have to explain evolution, we accept evolution, but explain with something else, not from Darwin's theory. They accept that Darwin is gone, that neo-Darwinism, everything is gone. Now we have to find a way to explain evolution. So what Puri Maharaj says, given this diagram, and he said that what is happening in modern science is that we are, giving our image to reality, as if reality is slave of our explanation. Reality has to follow our equations. Reality has to be dictated by our, theories. But the outcome of that is that a misconceived image of, true reality. Reality has its own, truth. But what we are presenting is that our, false ideas or the idols of mind. We are worshipping the idols of mind. We are making some image, like for example, conceiving elephants, belly as a wall, or the legs as the trunk, like the tail as, some rope. Like this, we can, conceive. But that is not the way of understanding the truth. Truth is not our slave. It is self-revealing. And that revelation comes when we realize it is something inconceivable by my own efforts. This is the first thing. And that's why, there are philosophers also who have, understood and studied in Western world very deeply about, living, reality. For example, Aristotle, he talks about dead matter, which is, dunamis or potential, and matter in action, energia or actuality. So the word actuality implies, act or energy. And what moves dead matter, dunamis or potential, into action, energia. Aristotle called that actualizing force as entelekia or enteleki. This peculiar word comes from the telos or teleology and specifically referred to internal teleology. Sripad Puri Maharaj many times, written articles and explained about this idea that life has a internal, teleology. And Kant specifically explained about this. That you see in the machine, a robot may defeat you in the game. For example, I'm seeing here, many people are playing, different, gamblings in the machine, right? If you defeat a machine, will the machine be unhappy? Or if you win, will the machine feel unhappy or happiness? That type of, feelings are not there. If you defeat a machine will not feel sorrow. Who will, feel sorrow? The owner of that machine or the designer of the machine? He has the feeling. If machine defeats some chess player, a machine will not experience any kind of happiness or unhappiness. But the player will experience it. So this idea has been not understood. Machine has a purpose outside. But in the case of organism, the purpose is within. You have a purpose. That's why when you say freedom, purpose, when you have your own purpose, that life is represented by a freedom. That's why when you say freedom, then no laws are applied on that. Which laws will dictate you. That's why laws of karma also you feel uncomfortable. Because you are not meant to subject to any laws like that. You are free being. And your activities must be dictated by love and affection, all those things. But you are being controlled by some laws because of some kind of misconceived reality that we are living in. So Aristotle told the seed of an oak tree or egg of the chicken have certain potencies within them, characterizing the type of matter they are. When their potency is awakened, their enteleki will drive them to actualize as a tree or a chick. The embryo of a chick will not grow into a tiger, or embryo of a dog will not grow into an elephant. It knows precisely what it has to develop. So it has that kind of intelligence in there, that kind of purpose is there.
Maharaj, I'm sorry, could you define teleology?
Teleology means purpose. Means purpose. You have a purpose, right? Do you think that you have purpose in your life? Everybody has some purpose driven, right? Why you are doing anything? Why you are sitting here or whatever you are doing? You have a purpose. But you don't ask such purpose to a box or a table or anything, dead objects. So animated entities, they have a purpose. Why a bird is coming to a table, dining table, or to a place, that is a purpose. But why a cuckoo is laying eggs in the nest of a crow, it has a purpose. So that cannot be understood merely by mechanical or chemical reactions. The concept of Atma is there in our scriptures, and it explains, Bhagavad Gita explains, the symptom of existence of Atma is sentience. As modern science is talking about now, all living entities, they have cognition. Life requires cognition at all levels. This is the statement made by Shapiro, James Shapiro, in his book, Evolution, A View from 21st Century. So that means now they are coming towards an idea that to understand life, you have to address consciousness. And consciousness is the symptom of the existence of the soul. So this is very, very important hint that coming from our scriptures, and modern science is also going towards that. So abiogenesis is an insult to the life force. When you see some reality as if it is purposeless, like dead molecules, they are moving by some random forces, then it is an insult to life. You cannot respect living reality in that type of paradigm or the picture that being brainwashed to the students, young students. So our Vedic view is very simple. It says about two axiomatic truths which is empirically observable. Life comes from life and matter comes from life. We are always seeing life is coming from life, and cell biologists also realize it. Omnicellula, acellula. Every cell comes from a pre-existing cell. Cell is not produced in laboratory. Cell comes by cell division, not by mechanical or chemical accumulation of stuff. So, Om Purnamidam, that sloka explains that whole comes from the whole. Whole does not come by a accumulation, mechanical, chemical accumulation of the parts. And it is the part of the matter which isolated way we are seeing, that also come from life. We are living, Prabhupada famously said that I am living, that's why the nail is growing, the hair is growing. And if you go a further deeper level, Prabhupada explained, matter is the symbol of undeveloped consciousness. Why we are witnessing matter? Because we have not developed proper conception. We are seeing something is apart from the absolute. Everything is meant for his satisfaction, his service. But we are living in dual world of life and matter, dead and living, day and night, pain and pleasure, because we have some misconceptions. Living entity, soul, by nature, is in border, tatastha Shakti. Sometime under the influence of Mahamaya, sometime under the influence of Yogamaya. Until and unless you are being dragged into higher plane by some association of some higher energy, it is not possible for living entity to overcome that dual experiences. So Aristotle talk about the four causes: material cause, efficient cause, formal cause, and final cause. So modern science only talks about material cause and efficient cause. Means material means what material this building is made up of, what materials this cell is made up of. And then efficient cause means what forces involved, like gravity, adhesive force, all these things. In the cell, they talks about so many chemical reactions. But Aristotle told there is a formal cause. There is mind involved. Without mind, these building blocks will not produce a building. So formal cause. And then final cause means when a architect is making this building, he has a purpose in the mind. So you cannot avoid that. A cell has also mind, they say, because that's why cell does proofreading, error corrections. There is a phenomena inside the cell when the replication, DNA replication, it does proofreading, error corrections. Without any mind, how can it do it? A chemical will not do proofreading. So not only these four causes that our Vedic tradition discusses, it also discusses the original cause. Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchitananda Vigraha Anadir Adir Govinda Sarva Karana Karan. What is the cause of all causes? That also being discussed. And the link is established through that. In Vedanta Sutra, it starts with Janmadasyata. Adhata Brahma Jigyasa. Means inquiring about your true self in general way, if you understand. And then it talks about Janmadasyata, from where everything originated. It goes to the original cause. So like this, the causality goes much deeper in Vedantic understanding. So in objective science, we have a subjective element. That's why Sripad Puri Maharaj started one conference which we are doing for last 5 years, and this year the 6th international conference, which will be held at Bhubaneswar in October 26th and 27th at KIT University. The main theme of this is that scientists can explain science, but can science explain scientists? You understand? Scientist is producing all this science, Darwin's theory, Einstein's law, all these theories. But can that laws explain scientist who was thinking, feeling, willing? Srila Govinda Maharaj told, thinking, feeling, willing, they are units of life. You cannot understand life without including these three things: thinking, feeling, and willing. So
they missed something, Maharaj.
yeah. And in that, this year's sub-theme is exploring beyond the limits of physical sciences to understand life, its origin, its purpose, and biodiversity. So a small hint of that I have given in this. So because from where the concepts of science are coming, who is discovering the laws that we have in science, can science exist without scientists, what knowledge science has about the scientist, science without the knowledge of the scientist is an incomplete science. This is the basic theme of this event that we are doing. So, in our, Bhagavad Gita and, our scriptures, they told about, consciousness, and we all experience consciousness. And the soul is the seat or the origin of consciousness. Body is the biological expression of the consciousness of the soul. Means, what kind of consciousness one is, according to that, the body is cultivated or developed. So every form in Vedic tradition represents a particular type of consciousness. And so we have a evolution theory called subjective evolution, and that theory is known as theory of reincarnation. And it is known as transmigration of the soul or metempsychosis in Greek. So in this theory, by advancement, soul can obtain the human form, and by degradation, it can also go back to another form. And What is the foundation of this theory is the eternity of the soul. We generally don't talk about something eternal in modern science. Everything is changing, right? We don't see anything eternal. Everything is changing. Do you have any evidence of anything eternal? Can you tell something that you experience eternal? Anybody experience something eternal?
Explain what?
Something eternal that you experience.
Consciousness.
Consciousness is also changing, right?
We are not eternal, so we can never have witnessed anything that never had a beginning or an end.
In this
So,
plane,
yeah.
no.
Huh?
In this plane, no. But the soul is eternal.
Actually, in medical science, they experience something like that. They say that every 7 years, all of your bodily content changes, yet the concept of I remain. The identity remain. Throughout this, all changes. So that, because people don't want to die also, they want to live. They want to maintain their own, self because of their, that concept of I. And that is, maintained. Even though your all chemical constitution is changed, yet there is something in you which identify, I was that child, I was youth. After so many years, which all your chemicals are renewed, yet you have that, concept of, I or your identity maintained. In Bhagavad Gita, it is also told that soul is eternal. Some people says after getting liberation, the individuality eliminated. But Bhagavad Gita does not accept that. It says that all those, warriors, Krishna and Arjuna, all are where there was never a time when they were not existing, and they are now existing, and they will exist in future also. Bhagavad Gita explains this, and this is very, very significant thing. We should overcome this misconception. And what Bhagavad Gita tells is that it is the change that is happening. Gross body is changing through subtle body. Dehina yasmi yatha dehe komaram yavnam jara tatha dehantara prapti dhira tattarna mayate. So in Bhagavad Gita it is explaining that the child has a different type of mind, different type of what you can say intellect, different type of ego than when he is in young and when he become old. So it is the change of your subtle body which is carrying the gross body, one gross body, another gross body, driven by the subtle body. The same subtle body at the time of death carries the soul to new body. This is the explanation that Bhagavad Gita is giving. And our scriptures talks about different forms, 84 lakhs of species, and these all forms, they represent a particular type of consciousness. And the kind of consciousness that we are cultivating, we are going to get that body in future. And it says that this transmigration keep on happening until and unless we attain our original constitutional position as a completely dedicating unit to the satisfaction of absolute in Vrindavan. There is evolution is also happening even in Vaikuntha, and they are aspiring for higher plane. And there is a higher and higher perfections. Even in Vrindavan it is not stagnant. They are always trying how I can please more supreme. That type of evolution is going on. So it is more based on one's more internal development or degradation than mere mechanical manipulations of the reality, the way science conceives it. So there is a concept of gross body, subtle body, and transmigration of the soul at the time of death that is being discussed in many of our scriptures. Especially Bhagavad Gita talks about the kind of consciousness you leave your body, that type of body you are going to get. If you are thinking about eating, you will get pig body. If you are thinking about sleeping, you will get python body. So the kind of desires you have, that kind of body is being given. So if you are thinking about serving devotees, serving the Lord and His abode, then you will go there. So what kind of what you can say consciousness you are cultivating, we are going to get that destination. So
you're creator of your own projection, whatever you're projecting, your desires.
Yes.
You actually create of your own world.
Yes.
Yes.
Life means it has desires. You cannot eliminate desires, but your desires should be guided. And that guidance of desires, cultivation of proper desires, and that we sing every day after the Harikatha, Tadir Charana Sebi Bhakta Sannebas, Janame Janame Hoy Eyovilas. Having this desire, in the truest sense, is very, very difficult. We have many other Anya Vilas, other desires we have. So very difficult. So when we have the other desires, then laws of karma, and that binds us actually. And that gives us many kinds of different cycles of transmigration that is happening, and we are bound in samsara, endless cycle of birth and death. Punarapi jananam, punarapi maranam, punarapi janani jatare sayanam. So our scripture says that we can change and we can have our proper perspective when we connect our activities, our knowledge, our every very existence of being with the absolute. Then there is a possibility of establishing ourselves in another kind of world. Yoga means connecting. At present, we are thinking in material science, we are thinking only about the objects that we are observing. But we are not thinking what is in me that is observing those things. Isn't it? A eye has no power to see things. A dead body also has eye, does not see things. If your mind is somewhere else, your eye does not see things, even though something is moving in front of you. So, like this, going from one layer to another layer, whether I am mind, whether our intellect, whether I am ego, to go towards in inward direction. So there is self-consciousness. From material consciousness to self-consciousness. But that self-consciousness is not enough, because there are many selves. I am self, and there are other self, and there is other self. What is the relation between these all selves? And what is the relationship between all the selves and the original self, with the self of all selves? Then here comes Krishna consciousness. So material consciousness to self-consciousness to Krishna consciousness. And how to connect to that? So Sridhar Maharaj explains, we need the concept of organic whole. Reality is an organic whole, and we are all meant to participate in that whole as a dedicating unit. But we are at present captured by exploiting tendencies. And when we face difficulties, we stop it, renounce it. But that is not the solution. We have to learn to dedicate under proper association. So proper association is necessary. Like kids are getting some education, they're getting some bad education, and they're becoming atheists. If the same way, if they can get some good association, they can change also. So these all things we have to see and understand and associate with devotees, and try to present it in a way that sometimes if you directly present to scientists slokas and all those things, they don't listen. But this type of presentation Prabhupada wanted, so we are presenting and trying to explain them, and so they are listening and they are joining and they're appreciating. And we are also publishing papers in this type of works in journals. So in this way our work is more into intellectual people, how to help them to channelize their thoughts to more spiritual directions. So that's our humble service that our gurus kindly given us, and we are happily trying to engage by their mercy. And this is a book that we often quote, James A. Shapiro written, Evolution, a View from 21st Century. If you all like, you can see this book and many reviews on this. And Sridhar Maharaj also wanted this type of things must be presented more philosophically. He had a lot of discussions with Swami Maharaj's all this scientific background disciples, and that book came up, A Subjective Evolution of Consciousness. And Srila Goswami Maharaj, Bhakti Sudhir Goswami Maharaj, once he was telling me that among all the books of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, the subjective evolution of consciousness represents a whole of our Gaudiya conceptions completely. He said like that to me, because he was working with this, and he said like that about. And we have a website also, Darwin Underseas. You all can visit and look into some of the articles that we published there. And this is our center in Navadip. You're all sometime welcome to meet our gurus, and Acharya Maharaj, and associate with our great movement that started 500 years back. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and our acharyas revealed those places, and you all can associate and learn spiritual knowledge there. Thank you.
Maharaj, Niskama Shanta Maharaj ki jai.
Jai Gurudev. You have any questions or comments? Welcome.
What I would, you said Richard Dawkins, because I used to hear this.
Yes.
Actually, obviously comes from Abrahamic faith background because he himself was born in a Catholic.
Yes.
So, Vedantic.
Yes.
We could maybe give him that kind of a, and he's also discussions with the Vedic philosophy, the Jain philosophy, which he was trying to explain.
Yes.
Don't look at everything independently, rather look at everything as a whole.
Yes.
So, I think even Descartes, he looks like he also comes from a very biblical background because in Christianity,
Yes.
It's claimed that apart from human man, they don't even say.
Yeah.
Yes. they don't have soul.
Yeah.
People influence them, but Richard Dawkins definitely talks more about the Abrahamic faith because they
Yes.
don't explain this kind of,
Yes. Actually, Richard Dawkins being countered by many scientists. Don't talk about only religion, but in the science itself, like Shapiro says, fantasy, because he does not talk about all these developments that has happened in due course of time. He only talks about past things. But what is the present current scenario? Shapiro presents from the cell biology, and cell was a mystery not known before. But now the technology on the cellular activities, how a smallest in a cell exhibits so much wonderful intelligent activities, which cannot be explained by mere clock mechanism. Was Descartes conceived that the nature is like a clock, and you can explain it by a mechanical concept. So Shapiro discussed some of these things, and the selfish gene idea that he proposed that is being also challenged by many scientists. So those things can be discussed.
Knows the evidence.
Yes, but
these are two Chavas.
yes.
Can we call them Chavas?
So Dawkins have influence on some sentimental atheists.
Yes.
Do you know? But Dawkins a big influence on those who are really into the subjects. Don't have much influence on them.
But like for example, Sam Harris,
Yeah.
another big one, Sam
Yes.
Harris,
Yes.
and now he's suddenly moved towards Buddhism.
Yes.
After all that,
Yes.
now he's moved to Buddhism.
Yes. Because they are that type of atheism does not work. So another kind of atheism they want to adopt, right?
Spiritual atheism.
But you see, in the Buddhism, the Buddhi word is there, right? The rationality is there, and that how can it be explained, and how can it be denied? And Buddhism also explains about accepts reincarnation. It accepts reincarnation, and and it's maybe the soul or the eternal existence is an illusion, they say. But they accept at least the reincarnation, the beginning step, and then Mayavad, another kind of illusion. They say that existence itself is illusion in Buddhism. For Mayavad, there is only one existence, and that is Brahman,
Yes.
right? But it's a gradual progress that we've seen in our if you go to history, this is the progress that has happened. So we have to present them in a way that that will catch their attention. And then they may listen, some of them.
Because I think, especially with Buddhism, I think it came because out of rejection of the Vedas.
No. Buddhism, Lord Buddha appeared to stop animal killing.
Yes.
On-
There are 9 points of Buddhism, and they say that these Vedic texts are man-made.
No, that they say, but I am telling about the purpose. The purpose of why Buddhism came, Lord Buddha specifically appeared, being compassionate to the living entities which are being misutilized for misquoting the Vedic literature. The Treta Yuga process they were using for their sense enjoyment, animals. See, only that person can kill an animal in yajna who can give life to that animal. But Kali Yuga Brahmanas don't have such power. So they are simply misquoting it and doing for their sense enjoyment. So Buddha stopped it. Don't need to follow it. Use your buddhi.
It's happening even today with the animal sacrifice.
Yes, in Nepal especially. Yes, in Bengal sometimes, but more prominent in Nepal. If you see, it's there. So that's why Buddha came. But after that, Shankaracharya being sent to chase out Buddhism. Then after that, Madhvacharya, Ramanujacharya came. So it's a gradual, progress that we've seen.
What do you see as the purpose of our life? That's the fundamental reason.
Yes.
What do you
think purpose of life?
You're asking me?
Yes. You thought about it?
Yeah. To elevate my consciousness to a higher level.
Why?
Because that's the natural progression.
So you are happy by progressing, right? Why you do that? Why you progress?
Because there must be something fundamental that I need to progress through. That's what I'm trying to do.
But why that urge for progress happening? You want some satisfaction, isn't it?
Yeah.
So the purpose, when you talk about purpose, automatically the fulfilling aspect is coming. The fulfillment. So fulfillment.
Of my consciousness.
Yes. You want fulfillment. Every living entity wants some kind of fulfillment, happiness. Why people are doing, right? They want to become happy, but they don't know how to become. There is no signs of happiness. There is no signs of happiness.
Because
So
happiness has no limit.
yes.
If I am happy, then before I want to be more happy. So there is no happiness.
Dual world, sometimes happiness, sometimes unhappiness. So to transcend that, because they want it, that is their nature. They don't want to die, they want to know, and they want to become happy. Satchit Ananda. That is their nature. But they're not getting it because they have a misconception about their own self. And they're leading a life of misconception. So that's why it is material life. Material life means Srushti, Sthiti, Pralaya. Creation, maintenance, destruction. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. This is material life.
Our purpose is to achieve that permanent bliss.
So you have inner driven purpose. Whatever you are doing, maybe science, you are doing job or whatever you are doing, inherently the purpose is to get some fulfillment. But you don't know how to get it. See, a child, if he not being trained, a child will never become suitable to the society as a sober member. If you train a child by mechanically giving some food and some medicines, if the child grows like that, will the child relate to the society? It cannot relate actually. So they have to be trained. Okay, you should not behave like this, you must behave like that. The training is essential. We have to give training. Then that type of training is also essential to transcend from material life to spiritual life. From our experience of this material world, we cannot approach the spiritual world. So that training process, Lord established through a descending process of Guru Parampara. And when we connect to that line properly, with submission, child has to be submissive, right? Otherwise, how anything can be taught? A teacher is saying A, then they have to write A, B, C. All these things have to be taught. If there is no submissive, then they cannot learn also. So modern science, it is giving some kind of arrogance or how to cultivate false ego. So our preaching is to how to help them to become more humble. So we are not presenting our ideas, but you see what you people are saying. Some of your scientific literature is saying. You see it. It's what is published. It's not our ideas. This is what you say. Then they look into that and they see it and they appreciate it and then become humble. When one become humble, then something higher can be given. Right? Tatvidhi pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya upadakshanti te jnanam jnana tattadasana. Until unless you submit, then the knowledge cannot be given. Pranipat means Krishna saying, this is the way of receiving knowledge for obeisances, surrender. Obeisance means surrender. Pranipatena pariprasnena sevaya. Not only take knowledge, but you serve. Serving, then things will come. When the higher world is pleased, then some knowledge is giving for their satisfaction. We are not coming to this path to merely gain knowledge or to merely what you can say, so they know so many things or all those things. That is not our objective. Our objective is to how to please Lord and His devotees. Whether it's through by some knowledge or some kind of work or whatever it is, by killing also. We're killing so many grains. Vegans, they are too proud. They are vegetarians or whatever, But they are bogus philosophy. That is bogus philosophy. That to live, they have to kill so many living entities. Jiva jivascha jivanam. Every living entity to survive, so many lives they are killing. They're not seeing that. They're thinking that life is there only in animals. But why not life in the grain? Life there in the grain also. Are you eating that? You are not killing it? The Jainism you are talking about. Jainism putting some cloth in the nose and the living entities will not be killed, but they are walking, they are killing so many living entities. They are eating something, right? So this is bogus philosophy. Our life is based on dedication. We do sacrifice. We offer these things, this food stuff, rice, dal, all these things. We don't cook for ourselves. We cook for Lord. We offer it. And we don't just take birth by seminal birth. We are not believing only that. We can take birth by mantram, diksha. We take a connection. And our soul has a beautiful form, Swarup. And that perfection, Swarup Siddhi, can be attained also, where you can engage your constitutional activities. Mahaprabhu told K.A.M.I. when Sanatana Goswami asked, then Mahaprabhu told to Sanatana Goswami, Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishna Nityadas. Your identity is that you are eternal servant of Krishna. But why we are suffering in this world? Even though our constitutional position is that Krishna Bhuli Seiji Anadi Bahirmukh Atay Maya Tardi Sansara Didu. We forgotten our relationship with the Lord. We forgotten Him, and then we are suffering. And Lord's energy is giving, like you are given some freedom in this country or any other country. You are given some freedom because you have to be a good citizen of the country. But becoming good, instead of becoming a good citizen, if you are trying to steal things, you are trying to violate and against the city's interest, then what will happen? You will be implicated to law. That's what law of karma is binding. We are supposed to be the good citizen of the spiritual abode, but we have developed some improper, misutilized our freedom, and then we are subjected to law. We are bound by this body, right? A human body or cat body or dog body, whatever body it is, but it's a limitation that we have on the soul. The real potential of soul as a what you can say eternal existence and full of knowledge and full of joy by engaging itself in the service of the Lord is missing, and that's why we are searching. We are trying to become perfect, and what is that perfection also we don't know unless somebody informs us. And Krishna gives that information. First he tells that samsara dukkhalayam, don't search here some happiness. Or sasatam, you are having so much of planning, earning so much of pounds, but next day you are dying. That's garbage, nothing, and you have to go somewhere else.
Leads to another question.
Yes.
Why is my soul distinct from Krishna? Why did he start with this in the first place?
Why there is soul in first place?
Why separate?
Oh.
Now we have to elevate our consciousness, go from, I don't know, this is all theory, going from rock to plant to animal to human,
yes.
And elevate that consciousness up to God's state, merge with Krishna.
No, I know. Okay, let me tell you.
I didn't ask for this. Why?
Yes. I'm explaining.
What took me through all this?
The soul is not a, what you can say, thing that we are conceiving like Krishna. Soul is only an energy. We are only energy. Krishna is not energy, he is energetic, Shaktiman. And all other things are his different Shaktis. Krishna is the Shaktiman. He is Shaktiman, from whom all the energies are originating. Okay? We are not that origin. Rather, we are only an energy. What kind of energy? We are Tatastha Shakti. Tatastha Shakti, marginal energy. And this Maya, which is binding us, is known as Bahiranga, external energy.
Why did he produce all this?
Why did he produce? Yeah, you see, the thing is that the causal world exists in this realm. Causal world exists in this realm. Karana Sagara. Mahavishnu is lying in the Karana Sagara. But there is a realm beyond this, like a causality, cause and it's in effect relationship. Lord Shaktiman is there means already his Shaktis are there. If you say Shaktiman without Shaktis, and what kind of Shaktiman he is? When you talk about Shaktiman, means he already has all the energies. He's already there. So when you say the Mahamaya, Yogamaya and Tatastha Shakti, why we are here, it is not, if you say why criminals are in the jail, if you ask this question to me, then what I can tell that maybe they have done some mistake. I can say this much. It's not the problem of the country. That country is responsible for somebody to be in the jail. Because the person has done something. That's why he's in the jail. But if you blame the country, then there is some problem is there. Why we are here? Because we have to introspect why I'm here, why I'm experiencing this which I'm not supposed to. That's what is the first thing. We cannot blame the source of everything as if he imposed us this type of life. He given us freedom. If he make us a robot, okay, I switch it on and robot is always doing the activities the way I programmed it. It's not so sweet. But he given us freedom. Why he given us freedom? Because only free beings can love. A robot cannot love the owner. Robot can only imitate the living reality. It can make a face of laughing, but it will not experience that happiness.
So are you saying this is all our doing?
Huh?
This is all our doing.
All our.
This is
Our not only our doing, our association. See, that kind of thing that we are developing is not merely us. Even this material thing that we are experiencing, it is coming because of our bad association. We taken some bad association, and from that we have come into this type of unwanted realm. But we have always some opportunity is there to take good association, but we are ignoring it. Jesus told, many are called, few have accepted, right? The living entities are calling everybody. The Supreme Lord sent such living entities who are Nitya Siddhas. They are calling, please come, but we ignore them for so many lives. And now also we are ignoring. In the jail, if somebody tells you, don't do these bad things, okay? And they are giving some advice to you. If you don't follow it, then again you may implicate that law, right? But you are thinking, okay, jail is very nice place. I'm getting, some toothbrush here, I don't have to do much, and getting television, and you are happy like that. Kamam Dehi, Jasam Dehi, we are praying to Durga Devi like that. Didi knows very well in Bengal, they pray like this, and he wants to become happy like that. Then that type of misconceived life is also there. Krishna does not force. Ye yatha mam prapadyante, tam sateva bhajamiham. The way you come to me, I also reciprocate accordingly. He does not force you. If you want to,
step back.
Yes.
The origin. Or
yes.
The point of starting this whole process.
Like how did he come down?
Yeah.
Why?
I told you, because you've taken some bad association.
I never existed in the beginning. How did I ever? This theory says I always existed.
Yes, of course. That's what I was told. When you say Shaktiman, already Shakti exists. If you say that Shakti not existed and Shaktiman existed, there is something incomplete idea. Shaktiman means like a motor you say, and energy, right?
Yeah.
It produces. Same way, it's the from source from where all the energies are originating. But you say only energetic is there and no energy, nothing exists such things.
I'm an energy force.
Yes. And not any energy, you are a particular type of energy. That is Tatastha Shakti.
The sun emits energy. The sun is force, it cannot exist, one does not exist without the other.
Yes. He gave a very nice example. If you say sun without sunlight, what kind of sun it is? The Bhagavad Gita says like that.
Yes.
If you say sun and without sunlight, what kind of existence is this?
And also I want to add to one of your queries. I also had that query before. So what I find is every creature wants to be a better living creature. For example, an ant wants to be like a bee, and a bee wants to be like to get more experience.
Why it want to be? Why?
That own desire.
Why the desire is coming?
Yes.
Why the desire is coming?
Because we are evolving with
No,
Krishna.
because it is associating with that. If you associate with bees, maybe you will develop that type of desire. Otherwise, you may not think about bees. Why should you think about bees?
Huh? I'm talking about the progress. The question was from the beginning, isn't it?
The kind of association, you cannot change your consciousness. Always you remember this. Nobody can change their consciousness. Only their association changes their consciousness. Yeah. What kind of association they are taking, that type of consciousness. Like Bharat Maharaj was developing attachment to that deer and he became that. So what kind of attachment you are? People are attached to dogs, so much and so. So you have to be careful about these things.
That's what I mean. That's like,
They're so attached to their dogs. So if people are so attached to their dogs, you see this in our society.
That's why Bible says, since of Hagar, Abraham,
Yes.
they fell.
Yes.
Because of Jesus, they got liberated. Association.
Yes.
Abraham, not everybody associated with Abraham. Association made them fall.
So the initial association, good association, comes through when sadhu comes to somebody's place. Please give some grains. I want some bhiksha. Give some grains. Give some coins. Give this. Give some cloths for deities. Something, you know. Oh, you sweep this. So some way he using our energy, and that is sukruti. This is initial association. Then more substantial association comes by initiation. From a proper sadhu, when take initiation. Then more proper association comes through shiksha and training. Diksha Guru is saying, Jiver Swaruphai Krishna Nitya, that was theoretical. But how to become really servant of Krishna? The shiksha means the shiksha Guru engages on the service. And then why we are doing, we are telling about what is the purpose, that's prayojan. That is means fulfillment, releasement, releasing aspect. Sambandha abhideya prayojan. There is also there in Mahaprabhu's philosophy. So in this way the progression is happening.
Maharaj, I'd like to say to you, the animal life, they're different than the humans. They're like in solitary confinement. They're there because they've committed a bad activity, and they have to work that off in that confinement. They don't have consciousness to develop. We do. Only the animals. They're there, only just maybe progressing to better cells. But eventually they come out, and then we have a choice.
Yeah, that's what he asking the same question of the force of origin and progression into the human being.
One moment, please. One moment, please. You answer me once. He's asking me a question, please. The consciousness that you have, people in this society worship their dogs. They're thinking about their dogs all the time. If at that point of death, the Bible says at the point of death, what you're thinking of is what you become. You develop that consciousness, you're looking after it, feeding it meat and grooming it, and it's got you on a lap. And that, if you're thinking of that at the time of death, that's what you become in your next life. This is
what we create that energy.
We create this.
Yes.
We create for ourselves. It may be accidental, it may not be realizing it.
That's right, yes.
We are getting late?
That's right.
Oh, no. We are not going to get all that.
The Saraswati Didi arrived.
Every day.
Actually, I will tell you one important thing here. What Maharaj was emphasizing is very important. That animal body is known as bhoga body. They are not subject to law of karma. If a lion kills a brahmana, you will not get a brahma hatya sin. Because they don't have discriminating power. But it is possible even those animals may get some higher consciousness or lower consciousness by association. We see the evidence. For example, the dog of Sivananda Sen, or many such examples, and they can get association, like a tree, for example. If a devotee is coming and sitting below the tree, and tree's consciousness get elevated.
Yes.
Even though it is not coming directly under the karma by Jnata Sukruti, but they are not forbidden for Ajnat Sukruti.
Yes.
So Ajnat Sukruti is already there with them actually.
That's why all the Hindu gods are associated with animals as well. I mean, they are the part and parcel of the...
I mean, all these forms, Krishna exists in these forms.
Yes.
Krishna originally, these all forms, the perfect form of bacteria, perfect form of a dog, Krishna exists in those forms. Krishna has all these forms, But a perverted reflection of those reality, what we are seeing it here.
He just says, I am in them, but they are not in me.
Yes.
So that means Krishna is beyond the collective total of all living beings. Krishna is beyond the Brahman understanding. I think we do have to cut short and let's have arti. But I want to thank Maharaj so much. I mean,
very much, Maharaj did say
next, he's going to also give one talk.
I feel that what you're doing is very crucial. I had a little glimpse of just what Srila Prabhupada must have seen, that if you could influence those people who set the paradigm for society, you can change the consciousness of society. These people, control more or less control the government officials in so many things. You know, if you can get to them, you can change the paradigm. So your work is very important. You know, I think
our gurus, they engaged us, and for their satisfaction, we are doing something, even though we are full number one, right? So sometimes, you know, we don't know, you know, how we are eating and the food is getting digested, right? But it is happening somehow. So we are only willing, you know, trying our best to, you know, follow their, you know, wish. Even though we are imperfect, we are doing so many mistakes, but they are so kind. They don't see any faults, and they're trying to kindly engage us. It's a very, you know, beautiful life of engaging ourselves under the guidance of Sadhu, Guru, Vaishnava. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj says, don't look for any result or perfection. What you look for is in the how can we in the process of serving Sadhu, Guru, Vaishnava. Why to worry for result when process itself is so nice? Process is so nice, Srila Sridhar Maharaj says. So that is so beautiful, you know, concept. If we are thinking that's a liberationist idea, we do something and after that we get something. But what we are interested is Jivera Swarup Hai Krishnera Nitya Das. Eternally I want to be the servant of servant of servant. This type of, you know, conception we must cultivate under, you know, proper association, and that will be what is, you know, necessary. And Sriman Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came. Even in India, long time the concept of liberation, the concept of, you know, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, the four purusarthas are being preached, and people are practicing this. They are doing various so-called religious activities for these four things: dharma, artha, kama, moksha. But the Mahaprabhu teaching is fifth purusarth, pancham purusarth. That is known as Krishna Prem. How to cultivate love of Godhead, which transcends the duality of sukha and dukkha, pain and pleasure, at all circumstances. Sukhe, dukkhe, bhulo nako, sada hari bole dako. In the bad circumstances, good circumstances. How can I be always be engaged happily in the service of the Lord? Seva, sukha, dukkha, parama, sampada, nasaya, avidya, dukkha. In service also there is pain and there is pleasure. But this is our prime wealth, which destroys the miseries of this world. This should be our objective.
Bhakti, Niskama, Shanta Maharaj ki jai.
So
we have arti. We have arti now where we